Okay, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're stepping into the shoes of a naval security expert to conduct a tactical autopsy on a massive maritime mystery. We are looking at an incident that honestly reads like a spy thriller, but it's entirely real, it's been deeply analyzed by independent investigators, and it carries some heavy geopolitical implications. So let's break down the incredibly perplexing sinking of a heavily escorted vessel right in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea.
So picture this. It's the ultimate inciting incident. Ask yourself, why in the world would a supposedly standard routine cargo ship going down off the Spanish coast on December 23, 2024 suddenly trigger a scramble of international nuclear surveillance aircraft? I mean, normal freighter accidents definitely don't attract US nuclear sniffer planes, and they certainly don't cause a wave of covert military responses. But as you'll see, this was absolutely no normal accident. This vessel was carrying a secret that someone was seemingly willing to kill for to ensure it never reached its destination.
To really understand what happened here, we got to look at the ship itself. The Ursa Major, also known as the Sparta III, was a known asset in Russia's shadow fleet. This was not just some commercial freighter moving consumer electronics, The Ursa Major had a long history of moving highly sensitive military equipment, especially during military evacuations in Syria. So its mere presence in European waters was immediately noteworthy to Western intelligence. It basically set the stage for a high-stakes game of cat and mouse.
All right, Section 1, tracking the final voyage from the Baltic to the Mediterranean.
Let's map out exactly how this ship ended up 2,500 meters down at the bottom of the ocean. We just have to follow its rather suspicious journey. It docked at the fuel port of Ust-Luga in the Gulf of Finland on December 2nd and then officially departed St. Petersburg on December 11th. But the critical moment, the real turning point, happened on December 22nd. The ship exhibited this sudden, completely unexplained slowdown in Spanish waters, noticeably altering its planned route. When Spanish rescue services reached out, the crew actually lied and assured them no emergency had occurred. Fast forward less than 24 hours later, at 11:53 a.m. UTC, the vessel veers sharply off course and transmits a desperate distress call.
And here's where it gets really sketchy. The Ursa Major wasn't traveling alone. It was operating inside a highly secure convoy, flanked by two Russian military ships, the Ivan Gren and the Alexander Otrakhovsky. Unsurprisingly, a formation like that drew heavy scrutiny. Portuguese naval aircraft and ships were actively tracking the convoy as it navigated through European waters. Having this level of dedicated military escort for a supposedly standard cargo run, that is a massive red flag.
Moving on to Section 2, Secrets in the Cargo, Paperwork versus Reality.
Okay, you have to look at this discrepancy regarding what was actually inside the ship's hull, because it is absolutely wild. The official paperwork claimed the ship was bound for Vladivostok in Russia, carrying 2 large cranes, 129 empty containers, and 2 extremely large manhole covers. Right. But time-lapse video of the loading analyzed by investigators showed a deliberate gap left under those covers. The reality? Independent investigations and Spanish authorities discovered the true destination was most likely Raksan, North Korea, and that cargo? It was actually components for 2 VM-4SG nuclear submarine reactors.
And we aren't just guessing here, because this quote comes straight from the Russian captain himself. After initially trying to stick to that absurd manhole cover story, the captain finally caved and admitted the truth to Spanish investigators. He confirmed the presence of submarine-type nuclear reactor components, though he claimed he didn't know if they were actually loaded with nuclear fuel. Keep in mind, this voyage took place just months after North Korean leader Kim Jong-un sent troops to assist Moscow's invasion of Ukraine. It's highly likely this cargo was a strategic, nuclear-level payback.
Which brings us to Section 3, Anatomy of the Attack and a Forensic Weapon Analysis.
So what actually took down a vessel flanked by military escorts? Let's look at the physical evidence. When Spanish rescuers arrived on the scene, they found the ship immobile, heavily listing, and dealing with the aftermath of 3 distinct explosions on its starboard side. But crucially, they found a very specific, localized 50 by 50 centimeter hull breach near the engine room, and the metal was bent inward. To make matters even stranger, the engine room was mysteriously sealed shut from the outside. That inward bent metal points directly to a high-velocity external impact. Based on that specific damage profile, Spanish investigators suspect a Barracuda-type supercavitating torpedo. Now, this isn't your standard submarine weapon. It's an incredibly advanced, very rare piece of naval weaponry believed to be operated only by a select few NATO members, Russia, and Iran. Some folks threw out the idea of a limpet mine, but a supercavitating torpedo perfectly explains the sudden, devastating nature of a strike that totally bypassed the military escorts.
If you're wondering how this thing works,
It's actually fascinating. A supercavitating torpedo relies on a crazy physical phenomenon. First, the weapon creates a gaseous air bubble around itself as it moves. Second, that bubble drastically reduces underwater friction and drag. Because it's essentially flying through a pocket of gas underwater rather than pushing through heavy water, it can strike the target's hull at an extreme, armor-piercing velocity. That perfectly explains the specific 50 by 50 centimeter inward breach and those catastrophic triple explosions.
Now we have to mention there was a real human cost to this tactical strike. While 2 crew members tragically died in the blast near the engine room, 14 survivors did manage to escape in a lifeboat and were successfully evacuated by Spanish rescue services.
All right, Section 4. Aftermath and Cover-Up. Securing the wreckage.
The second those survivors were off the ship, a completely bizarre and intense sequence of international military maneuvers kicked off directly over the wreckage site. Almost immediately, the Russian escort ship Ivan Gren fired red flares and aggressively ordered all other vessels to back away. Then, highly specialized US WC-135R Nuke sniffer aircraft flew over the site twice, clearly checking for radioactive leaks in the water. A week later, the Russian spy ship Yantar shows up and lingers right over the exact spot for 5 days. And during that 5-day window, Spain's National Seismic Network recorded 4 entirely new underwater explosions. Investigators strongly suspect Russian intelligence intentionally detonated the remaining seabed evidence to make absolutely sure those reactor components stayed out of Western hands.
Finally, Section 5, the proliferation puzzle and the strategic fallout.
Let's zoom out a bit. We've got 2 totally fractured narratives here. The state-linked Russian owner of the vessel, Oberon Logistics, publicly claimed the sinking was a targeted terrorist attack. On the flip side, the Pentagon, the British military, and Western intelligence officials maintain a cold, absolute silence. They've only gone so far as to call the incident strange, without offering a single alternative explanation. Nobody is taking credit for this, but the outcome perfectly aligns with Western non-proliferation goals. It stopped a massive upgrade to North Korea's nuclear submarine program, and it signals a chilling, definitive freeze in long-term military alliances between Russia and Western nations.
So what does this all mean? Well, it leaves us with a pretty chilling realization. If this was indeed a deliberate, high-risk sabotage by a NATO member to stop Russia from arming North Korea with advanced nuclear tech, it represents a massive, undeclared escalation in shadow warfare. It shows the extreme, lethal lengths nations will go to halt the future proliferation of nuclear technology. As the Ursa Major rests 2,500 meters deep, its secrets mostly vaporized by those follow-up explosions, it really makes you wonder, what unseen line is going to be crossed next, and what other tactical mysteries are currently resting quietly on the ocean floor?